All right, everyone, welcome back into another Prize Picks video. Going to be touching on the top prop bets in NBA today, as well as touching on some college football props as well as some NHL. As always, I do want to start out with a quick recap from yesterday. So the bet of the days, I kind of gave out two. One that was the EV based bet. That one won 50%, as is this one. Now, this one we knew that we weren't getting as many good percent bets on it, but the Kyle Kuzma one was tilting. He was at 6 rebounds for a lot of the game. Kyle Kuzma had himself a bad game. The seemingly kind of free square again, Zubac was able to get there pretty easily, but I want to recall or just remind you guys of a very good practical use of these videos, and that being that I mentioned, he's going to be someone that we should be going in on. He really crushes over fantasy score compared to his points, rebounds, and assists. That was seemingly an easier call. I can't control when the fantasy score props come out. It'd be nice if they were out in the mornings when I was doing these videos. The issue is we don't know if they're going to come out in the afternoon, early morning. It differs for every single slate. So that's why I go through the process. And then this was a stack that I kind of recommended to you guys as well. Again, like the fantasy score props for Maxey and Harris just continue to be undervalued. Their points, rebounds, and assists as well, but their fantasy score continues to be undervalued. Just a strange thing that's occurring. And then, I mentioned we could stack Killian Hayes there as well. That ended up working out pretty well. So I do want to start out the day with just some EV bets that we have in college football and also NHL, and then I'll get into the NBA slate. So looking at college football, we do have some interesting ones for sure. So I'm currently excluding fantasy score, and then I'll show you guys it with fantasy score in there only. Right now we are seeing, I like all these, honestly, especially the receptions props. I typically kind of like to go towards those a little bit more. We are also seeing Nathan Carter for over rush yards. The average sportsbook line is favoring it, a little bit more for the under, but at 43. So at 40.5, we're getting a decent edge there. We're seeing this one as well for Mario Anderson. Underdog has it set at 23.5. PrizePicks has it set at 26.5. So at 24.5, that is seemingly, or for the average sportsbook, it also has that 24.5. So at 26.5, we can see that this is the outlier. We should be betting the under there. And then just some more, obviously we're looking at those prop bets that are going to be over 54% likely to hit. And we are getting a decent amount of those, a lot of good prop bets there. I want to show you guys this one for Jonathan Brooks, receiving yards is favoring the under. And I'm kind of just calling that out because when we go ahead and get into fantasy score, he's someone where we are seeing the under. Now, I want to point out the reason as to why some of these players might be favored for the under that, are seemingly players that have been playing well. This is very much dependent on them scoring a touchdown or multiple touchdowns. The data doesn't really, at least PrizePicks data doesn't really account for touchdowns as much, but that's where, sometimes PrizePicks data accounts for touchdowns a little bit too heavily, and I think that's what we're seeing with some of these under bets that are being favored. But that's why sometimes I think the over fantasy score prop bets for college football can be the ones to go with. So I don't mind these two. We're getting some other ones here as well. A pretty good likelihood for those. And then we're still getting some other ones. Ray Davis, this is one yesterday that was at 10.5. That was one I used on my Flex Friday slip. That's it, and my Flex Friday slip is currently 4 for 5. And I'm gonna be so mad if he doesn't get 10.5 because they gave me because obviously 4 out of 6 doesn't catch out as well. Real quickly, let's go ahead and get into NHL. Searching for any good EV bets. We are getting a couple under shots on goal here. Really only 3. Okay, so if you guys want to roll with those, you can. Now let's go ahead and get to NBA. All right, so we only have 4 games going on today, which should be a little bit more straightforward. We got the Bucks versus Magic, 232 for the over and under, 3.8 for the spread. Bucks are favored to win by 3. Damian Lillard, currently a game time decision, guys. I kind of expected one of the Bucks players to sit last game, and we saw that happen. And it ended up being Damian Lillard. So that was just the back end of a back-to-back. I don't know. We just typically see that with the Bucks. I know it's a different coaching staff and whatnot, but that to me is why he sat out. So I'm expecting him to play. And now if we look at the projected starting lineup, he is currently a game time decision, but I think he's going to play. Obviously, if he sits, Giannis is going to get a big edge. We'll touch on that in a second. Looking at Magic, it does depend. A lot of the slate does depend on Gary Harris being active or not, and I'll touch on that, but we do see Wendell Carter is still going to be out. So looking at the Bucks, we are going to see a lot of the unders are being favored for Giannis currently, and he's the only one we are getting props for. That's because we don't have that Damian Lillard news. Now, I will say, last game I mentioned I think he's going to crush really for 2 reasons. One being that he got some kind of dumb technicals. You could see he was fired up. So I thought he would go out and play well against Indy, but it was also a great matchup. And then on top of that, there was, the slight factor that Lillard could sit. To me, this is still a pretty easy matchup as well. And obviously, if Lillard sits, we are seemingly gaining a pretty awesome edge here as well. And so if we just look at his per 36 production with Lillard off the court, it does average 37.2 points, 9.6 rebounds, 5.2 assists, and 1.7 blocks and steals. Averages 56 fantasy points per 36 as well, so a slight edge there. Yeah, his fantasy score prop, I would be fine betting the over there. Now, I do want to touch on some other bucks. If he were to sit, Bobby Portis would be someone that would seemingly get an edge there. Now, what was strange is he only played 24 minutes in that game. He was playing well, but only got 24 minutes. He gets the second most minutes with Lillard off the court, averages 19 shot attempts per 36. The issue with Portis is that he typically comes in off the second unit, so tough to trust that. Campaign is obviously someone that would benefit as well. He saw 30 minutes in that game. His per 36 production is 14.1 points, 2.8 rebounds, 4.3 assists. And so, he probably did a little bit better rebounds and assist-wise compared to what we would think he would have. Only averages about 25 fantasy points per 36, so not dominant. We just see that really it's Chris Middleton that got the biggest usage bump at 11%. And we don't know how many minutes he's going to get. They are capping his minutes, but man, to get an 11% bump in usage, that is pretty crazy. And then Marjon Beauchamp as well. He's someone that saw a pretty big bump in his usage as well. 8% bump in usage with Lillard off the court. So just noteworthy there. We're not getting obviously that many prop bets for Giannis just yet because we need that Damian Lillard news. Let's go ahead and take a peek at Orlando. And guys, we are getting some fantasy score props. I'm going to refresh the data at the end just to see if we're getting more fantasy score props that filtered in. Looking at Orlando right now, the reason why it depends on whether or not Gary Harris is active is because that's about 20 minutes that's going to be spread among Markelle Fultz, Jalen Suggs, and also Cole Anthony. Anthony Black had been someone that was getting some run with Fultz off the court. We saw that instantly going down to 17. I'm actually curious what would happen if Gary Harris was back. I would think his would go down as well. But yeah, looking at Gary Harris, I think the expectation is that he's going to sit. We look at the last game, 14 minutes, he got injured in that game, and then typically about 20 or so minutes, 18 or so minutes. And because of that, because he's been out, we have seen Cole Anthony be getting around 20 to 30 minutes. We have seen Jalen Suggs get around, 20 to 30 minutes. And then also Markelle Fultz. He's the one player that we can trust to get the minutes. And so when we are seeing a prop like him for whether it's points, rebounds, and assists at 21.5 or assist at 4.5, that does stand out to me. I'm actually curious. Let's take a peek at his projected minutes here. 28. So that might actually be a little bit too low. He had 29 minutes in the last game. That was a close game. You also had Suggs playing well. And so yeah, 13 points, 12 points, averaging, 11.4 points. Look at assists, averaging 4 on the season. Maybe gets a slightly better bump in this matchup is probably what that is saying. Only projected to get 4.7. So not a great one. Let's actually take a peek at the points, rebounds, and assists. So at 21.5, I don't know, that does seem a little bit too high, but if we look at his season average, 11.4, 3.4, so like around 15 there, and then 19, and then you get the bump in the matchup, whether it be Campaign or Damian Lillard, the point guard should get a slight edge. I actually don't mind probably his fantasy score. We'll take a peek at it. Like if we're doing him at 21.5, we might as well just do the fantasy score because he's someone that will probably get a steal and he doesn't turn over the basketball too much. So that should be plus there. But I still think like Jalen Suggs, I'm going to continue to roll with this. This is one that the data has suggested over the past few slates with Gary Harris and or Markelle Fultz off the court. I'm going to assume it's going to like that again. I'm very curious as to if it does. And again, I'll be refreshing that at the end of this video. He seemingly is going to get a good matchup. And the thing with Suggs is he has been playing well. We know that. But the minutes should be locked in. And his minutes do depend a little bit on if he's playing well or not. He's been getting a lot of steals. Okay, that's a big thing for him. And he shot the basketball extremely well in the last game. Typically speaking, I don't like to target players coming in off of a very good night shooting, but we saw a ceiling game out of him where his floor has been pretty darn consistent really this whole season as well, especially with Gary Harris off the court. So that's where I feel like Gary Harris does change the dynamic of which props we would want to go in on. For now, it might be a little bit risky without having the news. I'm fine betting the over fantasy score there. And then just looking at some other prop bets that we have here, Banchero for under 7.5 rebounds, an okay one. Wagner, I don't know, with Markelle Fultz on the court, we just see the usage kind of shift a little bit between all of them. And really, with Carter off the court, I don't know, it seems a little bit weird with Goga and also Mo Wagner getting minutes as well. And then we also have to account for Jonathan Isaac being back as well. He played pretty well in 15 minutes. So if he gets a little bit more run, I don't know, I think we can see the plays like Banchero, who we can rely on getting minutes, don't get me wrong, and also Wagner. Like, typically speaking, we can rely on those guys getting minutes, but we did see Wagner's minutes take a slight hit. And so, yeah, I probably just want to stay away there. All right, now we move on into the next game. We have the Raptors versus the Celtics. We know that Al Horford is currently a game time decision. He did sit out yesterday, so I'm kind of expecting him to play today. It is a potential blowout, okay? 7.7 is what Boston is favored by, and it's a 233 over and under, so not the best one there. We'll see if Scotty Barnes is currently still being undervalued. That might be the only prop bet that I see we have on the slate. And so we get into Toronto, and we're seeing that we're not getting very many good EV bets. And honestly, this game probably right now feels like more of a stay away. And we'll go through the process, obviously. Scotty Barnes is someone that we've been able to trust quite a bit. Dennis Schroeder has been someone that has been playing well as well. But I want to take a peek at Scotty Barnes, points, rebounds, and assists at 32.5. He is someone we could potentially be looking at for over fantasy score as well, depending on where the line comes out to be today. And the reason I think Scotty Barnes is someone we could look at is because, like Maxey and like Tobias Harris, we have not seen the markets adjust really for their roles that they are playing. Scotty Barnes is playing heavy minutes when games are close, which is what we love. And he's just been extremely consistent. Even looking at the numbers that we have here, 21.5 points, 10 rebounds, and 6 assists. Now, yes, we have to account for the matchup being a little bit more difficult going against Boston. That being said, I don't know. I feel like because I've been on Scotty Barnes a bunch this season, it might be a situation where I just continue to roll with him. And we can kind of see it clear as day that this line does seem to be a little bit too low. But why I like fantasy score a little bit more, depending on where it comes out to be, is that he has been getting blocks and steals, and they haven't really been accounting for that. And he's not turnovering the basketball too much. And really, we have seen that his assists have been up in like games where he doesn't get blocks and steals, which is great, or he's not having that many turnovers in a game. And so for the most part, we have seen that he has been plus in terms of the turnovers to blocks comparison, which is really the biggest difference between the fantasy score being a better bet compared to like points, rebounds, and assists. So to me, that's a plus. And so I like him. We do always have to account for Jakob Poeltl getting minutes or not getting minutes. Let's just take a peek at that. So Jakob Poeltl, 21 minutes in the last game against Dallas, which to me was super strange. I didn't see him get into foul trouble. Now he could have. It was just weird. Okay. And it continues to be weird. And Precious was still out in that game. And so like we didn't have to worry about that. Siakam, I'm going to guess, did get some run at the center position, or it's just, Dallas is a little bit smaller, especially with Derek Lively being out. I think we just saw Siakam play the center a little bit more. And he's someone where, maybe in a game stack, we could run him out for his overs, but he's been too inconsistent. And that's where I like Scotty Barnes a little bit more. Let's go ahead and take a peek at the other side of the basketball. We got Boston. And so looking at the Boston Celtics, we're seeing a lot of their bets are being favored for the over. Now, I don't like the turnover props. I just don't. They feel fluky. One of the better bets we had yesterday was actually Joel Embiid for under his turnovers. He ended up getting the over. Rebounds and assists for Tatum at 13.5, a decent one. Jaylen Brown for over rebounds. Yeah, these all seem to be a little bit too tight. It's kind of weird that we're not getting any Drew Holiday props or anything like that. And just going back to the other side of the game, like if the game stays close, I do think Dennis is going to be able to get his over. Jaylen Brown had himself a pretty good first half against the Brooklyn Nets, but the production for these two teams is just a little bit too sporadic for me to really trust because they go 4 deep, right? And Derek White when he has a good game as well, so like 4.5 deep. So yeah, I don't know. They just seem a little bit too difficult to trust when everyone's healthy. So let's go ahead and move on into the next game. We got the Heat versus the Hawks, 228 for the over and under, 228.5, I guess, and then 4.7 for the spread. Looking at the injury report, nothing too crazy for the Hawks, which is great. We look at for the Miami Heat, we have Caleb Martin out and also Tyler Hero out, and then Jimmy Butler currently a game time decision. And so with that, I'd be surprised if we're getting a bunch of prop bets. And yeah, we're not getting any for them. And that's something I'll circle back around to once I refresh the data on my end. It updates every hour, just as an FYI to people. But in order for me to keep the cost down on the website, it has to be that. And I only get like a few manual refreshes per day, once again, or else I'd have to increase the cost of the membership. And I don't want to do that. I like it at a very affordable price for everyone. That's just behind the curtain stuff a little bit. Don't need to divulge on that too much. But real quickly, let's just kind of talk about it. So Jimmy Butler is expected to play. Tyler Hero's out. out. And then, yes, Caleb Martin out as well. And so where I'm really interested here, especially for Miami, is maybe Highsmith, but also I'm wondering if we're going to get some Jaquez props. I have been really wanting to see Jaquez get some more minutes for them. And it's kind of happened. Like, he's been getting around 20 minutes or so, but he's been playing extremely well for them, pretty efficient as a just fantasy producer as a whole. And he's someone where I want to get some prop bets on him because I would assume they're going to be too low considering how well he's played. And if he gets a little bit more run, that'd be extremely interesting to me. But let's go ahead and take a peek at the per 36 production for this whole squad with Tyler Hero off the court. And so, like, last game we saw Kyle Lowry get 35 minutes, and he had himself a very good game in that game. And part of the reason as to why is because they just need him to get minutes right now. Again, I'll say I think the Heat should go out and trade for Malcolm Brogdon. I feel like that would just be a good piece for them. Now, guys, we're going to have an extremely low sample size for Caleb Martin and also Tyler Hero being off the court. So it's not going to be the best sample size. Like, Kyle Lowry only has 74 minutes going into that. Typically, I like to look at, at least 100 minutes going into a sample. But looking at it, Kyle Lowry does average 13 points per 36 with Hero and Martin off the court, 8.7 rebounds, and then 6.3 assists. So we can see he would get like a slight bump in all of those. His biggest bump is obviously going to be in the points, and that's mainly due to the fact that he has to get up at least 10 shot attempts up, which is not a lot still, but all in all, we have seen that he's someone that typically hasn't been getting 10 shot attempts up, even with the minutes. So we have seen him get an 8.5 bump in usage. And that's the biggest thing there, is that he's just going to be handling the basketball a little bit more. And then from there, we do see that it's really Duncan Robinson that gets the most work with Hero and also Caleb Martin off the court. And we saw that last game, 35 minutes in that game. We saw that last postseason as well. He is someone where, if we look at his per 36 production, averages 13 shot attempts, only has 7 in the last game, and 8 3 balls, only 5 in the last game. So kind of a weird game there, but does average 14.3 points, 5 rebounds, and 2.5 assists. Yeah, maybe he's someone we're looking at here. Just I think we can project him to get some more run in this game. So maybe we're looking at him. Highsmith is who's projected to start. He is someone that could get some run as well. It's actually split between him and Jaquez in terms of minutes, and we saw that kind of last game as well. So I'm interested in how that dynamic works out. And then for what it's worth, talking about Jimmy Butler. Now, he is a game time decision, expected to play. He just hasn't been playing all too well this season. Only averages 19.8 points with Hero and Martin off the court, 5.3 rebounds, and 4 assists. Now, he does average 2.6 steals, which maybe that'll help him. Does get a 4.6 bump in usage, and then also a 2.7 bump in his fantasy score, so like 37. Against Atlanta, not a terrible matchup. He'd be someone that I would expect to have a good game, but we'll see. Once again, I'll refresh the data at the end of this video, and I guess let's just do it now because we're not getting any Hawks ones as well. And so here we go. We are seeing that Kyle Lowry probably going to be a good over fantasy score option. Once again, we look at his per 36 production with Tyler Hero off the court. That's seemingly going to be a good one there, guys. So that might be one that we can go in on. Just take a peek at the other Miami props that we have. We are seeing Jimmy Butler, who again has been someone that has been struggling. We're seeing that the under fantasy score is being one that is being a good one. And for what it's worth, per 36 production thus far this season, although limited sample size, 40 fantasy points per 36 with Tyler Hero off the court. So yeah, we are gaining a decent edge there. I don't mind betting the unders there. Let's go ahead and take a peek at Atlanta. So Atlanta is going to be healthy, which to me, that makes them all a little bit more difficult. We saw Trae Young go off in the last game, kind of as expected. He was the best prop bet on the board 2 days ago for him for the over fantasy score. The question becomes, can we go back to him? And the question I have is, was that a turning point for him? Like, is he better now? Because for a while there, he just had some weird stretches going in there where he just wasn't shooting the basketball all too well. Now, obviously, he shot the basketball better, but he had a lot of free throw attempts. 12 and 11 the last 2 games. We can't really rely on that too much. At the same time, I don't mind it. I don't go back to it tonight. Now, he is someone that has been playing better as of recent. That is what we would like to see. It is a little bit more difficult of a matchup, and his fantasy score is definitely up there compared to what it would have been had he not gone off in that last game. But the minutes have been pretty much locked in regardless of how the game has went for them. So that is seemingly a safety thing that we get. So Trae Young over fantasy score, don't mind. We are going to see that. We saw DeAndre Hunter for under fantasy scores, one that is a decent one. Let's just take a peek at that. And so the issue that we have with Atlanta, especially for something like Hunter, is that he has been getting minutes. Like, those minutes have been there, but at the same time, the production gets spread out. We got Bogdanovich that's been shooting the basketball well. He's been someone that's been productive, getting minutes as well. We got Bey, who is also getting a lot of minutes. We look at someone like Jalen Johnson, also someone that gets a decent amount of run. And so, yeah, like when we're looking at a prop bet like this, to me, if we're betting the under like the data is telling us to, which I'm perfectly fine with, then we would probably want to, if we could, which we can't, probably go Bogdanovich for over fantasy score, or maybe someone like Jalen Johnson, although this matchup's more difficult, so I probably don't want to do that. We do see Clint Capella is someone that could get into foul trouble tonight. He always depends on his minutes, and so like with Bam and whatnot, that's why I think he could get into foul trouble. So yeah, interesting there. Over turnovers for Clint Capella, it's not terrible. Yeah, just some okay props here for the Hawks. Let's go ahead and get into the final game of the night. That's going to be the Cavs versus the Golden State Warriors. Almost a 4-point spread, 224.8 for the average over and under line. So looking at this game, nothing really too much of note. I would say Oroko being out, that does matter somewhat. Okay, like we might see a little bit more minutes to some players, and I'll touch on that. But really, to me, the starting point for the Cavs is the simple fact that we saw Evan Mobley get a full allotment of minutes, getting Jared Allen got a decent amount of minutes in the last game, 28, 26. Now, is he someone that when he does get a full allotment of minutes, if it's like 32 or so, maybe, could that happen in this game? Maybe. At the same time, I don't think we're too worried about his minutes being limited now, the fact that he has gone 28. Now, this is going to be a good matchup for both him and Evan Mobley. Those are two players that should be able to have good games. But with Oroko out, I think we're just going to see Max Strus probably locked into his minutes like he really has been. LeVert is pretty much locked into his minutes as well. Niang, I don't know, his minutes are not something that we can trust. And so I just think we're going to see a little bit more run go to Strus and LeVert in this game. And then also we're going to see Darius Garland not having his minutes limited as well. So let's take a peek at the props that we're getting for Cleveland. We are seeing Jared Allen for under 12.5 points. With that, yeah, I was going to say, with that, we'd probably want to bet the over for Evan Mobley. Like, those guys very rarely correlate together, where if one of them has a good game, the other one also does. We don't see that too much with them. So when we're seeing a bet like Jared Allen for under 12.5 points, which is seemingly okay, we can see getting around 28 minutes or so, he's probably going to be right at 12. Again, this is kind of an easier matchup, so I do worry about that. But at the same time, if he's not doing that, then we can kind of bank on Evan Mobley having himself a good game. And so those two correlate. If you want to run those two out, I'm fine with that. We see Max Strus for over 13.5 for points and assists, a decent one there, about a 53% chance for that one to hit. And we can see points, rebounds, and assists at 17.5, also a seemingly good one. We'll take a peek at Strus. He is someone that is playing a lot. His shot attempts have been down a little bit from what they were at the start of the season. Makes sense. Garland's soaking up some usage. But he has been shooting the basketball pretty well, especially over the last two games. With Oroko out, I think we can bank on him getting 36 or so minutes as long as this game stays close. So, yeah, I don't mind the over points, rebounds, and assists at 17.5. That seems to be a little bit too low to me. Yeah, not bad. That's probably the best one we have there. Let's move on into Golden State. And so looking at Golden State, again, not that many great EV bets. We are seeing Kevon Looney for over 8.5 for rebounds is a decent one. Let's take a peek at that, because Looney is someone that I think is going to have to get run in this game. Let's actually take a peek at the starting lineup here. Projected to start, and I think that's noteworthy because when the Lakers can go small, I think that they will, meaning Draymond Green would start at center. But Looney is someone where when they need him to get run, Denver, Detroit, he can get run. Now, I don't know what happened in this game against Cleveland. That was strange, but he did get 11 rebounds in that game. So if he's going to be getting around 30 minutes in this game, I would say him getting over 8.5 rebounds is intriguing to me. That's probably something I want to go in on. Curry rebounds and assists at 8.5 is okay at 53% likelihood to hit, but not one that we want to be touching too much. So I do want to get into all the best props now that I just refreshed the data. Let's take a peek at that. And so Kyle Lowry over fantasy points, we saw that's a pretty good one. Giannis, I'm going to wait on, guys. I think you could do that both ways, honestly, where if Lillard plays, obviously he's not going to benefit from that. That number is probably too high, but if Lillard sits, that number is going to go up a little bit. Then we see DeAndre Hunter, Jimmy Butler under fantasy score, which is kind of painful to me, but I'm fine running those out. EV-wise, we had still Jaylen Brown for over 2.5 turnovers, and that is seemingly it. I did want to see Scotty Barnes. Yeah, they're favoring the under at 40.5 for his fantasy score. Trae Young, again, over fantasy points. Let's take a peek at the Scotty Barnes one just real quick. Yeah, I don't know. This is like Maxey all over again, where it's like, why hasn't the line corrected yet? I know it's a tough matchup. I know there's blowout potential and whatnot, but man, that line just seems too low for how well he's playing. And obviously going against Dallas and the Spurs, that's why he dominated in those games. But even against Portland and Philly, he played well. It's just, I probably will run him for over fantasy points. So let's go ahead and get into the bet of the day. Actually, let's take a peek at Jalen Suggs. Where's his fantasy score? And so, yeah, we're seeing Suggs where it's at 22.5, seemingly a little bit too low. Again, the average sports line would have it set at 23. The projection data would have it set at 24. So seemingly we are gaining a decent edge there. And so I'm going to show you guys a couple I don't want to go against the data because it's telling us to bet the under for Giannis. It's like seemingly the three best bets that I think we have: Lowry over, Butler under, and then obviously Giannis under. I don't love that too much. Let's take a peek at Underdog. I hate the fact that they come out with their props so much later, especially for fantasy score. We can typically gain a big edge there. Looking at it, we see Giannis for under 11.5 rebounds. That's one that they haven't bumped yet. We have Jared Allen for under 12.5. So a couple of good EV bets there as well. Let's go ahead and get into the bet of the day. And just real quickly, before I get into the bet of the day, do want to call out some NHL props that we have. So typically speaking, I'd like to use the slider to see where we are getting, small prop line differences. We are seeing though that with the shots on goal props, we're seeing like this one's 50% likely to get over 2.25 shots on goal. So at 2, that is seemingly a good one because it is obviously being valued as a push, but we are seeing it's a 50% chance for it to be at 2.25 for shots on goal. So that is a seemingly good edge there. We are getting that for a couple of shots on goal props right now. So interesting there. That's something that, those could get bumped up to 3, but also I doubt it. So like they're being favorited as pushes, so not terrible ones there. Now let's go ahead and get into the bet of the day. So seemingly based off the edges that we have on the boards today, this would be the best bet that we have available. Kyle Lowry that we're seeing for over fantasy points. I like that one. Jimmy Butler less than fantasy points. That's one where we are seeing probably should be a good one, where he only averages 39 fantasy points per 36 with him off the court. With Tyler Hero off the court. And then these are the best college football props. Let's show you guys another slip. So now here's another one where I'm fine with it. I don't love the idea of doing Giannis less than fantasy points, even though we saw that this was going to be one that we probably should be using, because that seems to be dependent on whether Damian Lillard plays or not. I think if Lillard sits, he's going to crush. If Lillard doesn't sit, I think he still has a decent chance to get there, so don't feel great about that. Jalen Suggs for over 22.5 for a fantasy score. I'm fine running out. Let's continue to ride the hot hand. Kyle Lowry, Jimmy Butler, we're seeing that those are two of the better prop bets again. And then Trae Young for over fantasy score. Want to point out that these two bets have a 53% chance to hit. It doesn't feel great going back to the two prop bets from 2 days ago's slip that really crushed, because all in all, they should have worse night shooting, so I don't love that, but all in all, they are two of the better prop. And then let's say you wanted to make a 6 slip bet and not use Giannis because it is dependent on Lillard, then you could toss in these two college football props that I toss in there because they are the later night games. Obviously, we have other prop bets. You guys could roll with the NHL props if you want to use those instead, but all in all, these are kind of the favorable bets that we have available today on Saturday. All right, everyone, that is going to be all for today's video. Make sure to hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any good EV bets at the start of the video. Make sure to hit the subscribe button as well as give the like. I appreciate you guys all being here. If you guys want access into that 9to5sports.com cheat sheet for PrizePicks and Underdog, it is available for just $10 a month. A very good value for you guys. I priced it that way for the public. 9to5sports, obviously, going for like the average guy. And so I don't want to have it be $50. That wouldn't be for the average person, right? All right, that's going to be all. Thanks for watching. Have a good slate. And as always, let's keep cashing.